Unfortunate, sad. I don't think you can plan. You can't plan on getting out ahead.
Somebody just said the one thing about Phil Mickelson that nobody was supposed to say out loud. Not a rival, not a reporter, the one man who used to call him a mentor. And he didn't whisper it to a camera crew off to the side. He said it standing in front of a wall of microphones, on the record, with his name attached to every word. At 56, Phil Mickelson is finding out in real time what it feels like when the person who once looked up to you decides he's done protecting you. Here's what should really stop you in your tracks. Rory McIlroy didn't pick a random Tuesday to unload years of frustration. He said what he said at the exact moment something else was collapsing behind the scenes. Something Phil almost certainly did not see coming.
Stop me from getting in contention or being able to win.
Connect those two things, and the timing stops looking like an outburst and starts looking like something closer to a calculated strike. What did Rory actually say, word for word? What was happening behind closed doors that made this the moment he finally broke his silence? And why, out of everyone who left for LIV Golf, is Phil the one being singled out and torn apart in public? Stay with me, because none of that is even the worst part. There's a golf club membership that vanished without explanation. There's an investigation Phil never expected to see the light of day. And there's a question hanging over all of it that Phil, as of right now, is refusing to answer. Personally, I don't think Rory said this by accident. Do you think he was finally justified, or did he cross a line? Drop your take below. And if you want the full story before it gets buried under the headlines, hit subscribe now, because what's coming is worse than the headline. It happened in the middle of tournament week, cameras rolling, reporters circling like they already knew something was coming. Someone finally asked Rory the question everyone had been too scared to ask directly. What did he really think about the players who bolted for LIV? And instead of the usual polished dodge, Rory said this. Phil was unhappy with some stuff. Surely that just warranted a conversation instead of blowing the entire professional game up and doing something else. Read that again. He didn't say Phil made a business decision. He didn't say Phil took an opportunity. He said Phil blew the entire professional game up. And he said it without blinking. That's not a critique of a swing, a season, or a contract. That's an indictment of who Phil is as a person, delivered calmly, in public, by the one man everyone assumed would never say it. He didn't stop there either. And that's the part almost nobody caught. He kept going, adding a line aimed less at Phil and more at the money behind him, suggesting the whole Saudi-backed operation had been mismanaged so badly that the tour could have done more with a fraction of the funding. Which raises a question that matters more than it sounds like it should. What did Rory know about the state of that money that the rest of us didn't? 900 miles from that press conference in a small town in Indiana, LIV Golf's final tournament of the season was about to begin, and the league throwing it could no longer afford to lose. The money that had been keeping the entire operation alive had reportedly been cut off mid-season, without warning. Tournaments got scrapped. Employees were warned about layoffs. The league that promised to rewrite the rules of professional golf was suddenly scrambling to find new investors just to survive its own calendar year. And the players who'd chased guaranteed money and shorter schedules? They were watching the ground shift under their feet in real time, with nowhere left to run. So when Rory said Phil blew up the sport, he wasn't guessing. He was standing 3 feet from the wreckage, pointing at it. Who actually lit the match on all of this? To answer that, you have to go back further than anyone's willing to admit. Phil Mickelson is a 6-time major champion, 3 green jackets, a PGA championship, an Open title. At 50 years old, he became the oldest man in history to win a major, a moment that should have made him untouchable, a living legend nobody could ever question again. He had absolutely nothing left to prove, and that is exactly what makes what happened next so hard to explain. The deepest cut in Rory's accusation has nothing to do with money. Everybody already knew Phil left for the paycheck. That was never the secret. The real accusation is quieter and far more damning. Phil didn't leave because he was wronged. He left because he didn't want to have an uncomfortable conversation. Instead of sitting across a table and saying, "Here's what needs to change," he chose to burn the whole system down and rebuild it on his own terms. Consequences be damned. Rory isn't exposing Phil's bank account. He's exposing something Phil can't buy his way out of. his character. Just when you think it can't get worse for a 56-year-old trying to salvage his legacy, it does. This isn't just a professional collapse anymore, it's personal. In recent months, Phil's membership at his own home golf club was quietly revoked following a staff complaint that has never been fully explained. Around the same time, a published investigation surfaced with multiple women coming forward alleging a pattern of inappropriate behavior spanning years. Claims Phil has denied outright, calling the reporting a targeted hit job timed to coincide with his LIV involvement. Nothing here has been proven in a court of law, and Phil is entitled to contest every word of it. But allegations like this don't wait for a verdict to do damage. The moment they're public, the reputation hit is already done. And right as the pressure peaked, Phil stepped away from the game entirely, citing a family matter. Convenient timing, or genuinely unrelated? Golf fans are going to be arguing about that for a long time. Two other superstars bet their careers on the same gamble Phil made, and now they're watching it burn from the inside. Bryson DeChambeau followed him to LIV in 2022, and the language coming out of his mouth lately says everything. He's been publicly hoping the league gets one more shot. That's not the language of a man who feels secure, that's the language of a man checking the exits. Jon Rahm is a different story entirely. LIV's single biggest signing, the man who was supposed to be the face of this entire movement. Reportedly still owed something in the neighborhood of $150 million, and reportedly already being written off internally by his own league, with insiders expecting him gone the moment his contract clears. Think about what that means. If the guy the league built its whole pitch around is already planning his exit, what's left for anyone else to believe in? Where does this leave everyone once the dust settles? Start with Phil. At 56, he's not just facing a bruised record, he's facing the total unraveling of a legacy he spent 3 decades building shot by shot. He's remembered now as the man who fractured professional golf and walked away richer for doing it. His personal reputation might be in even more damaged shape than his professional one, and the clock is not on his side. The window to rebuild any of this is closing fast, and right now, when he needs to be fighting for his name, he's nowhere to be found. Then there's Rory. For years he was painted as the stubborn loyalist who turned down life-changing money out of principle, and mocked for it by some of the very players now watching their league implode. Every warning he gave is coming true in real time, one headline at a time. He's not just a great player anymore. He's positioned himself as the one man in this entire saga who never bent. But here's the question that should worry him. Winning the argument and winning the war are two very different things, and the second one isn't decided yet. As for LIV itself, the entire league was built on one premise: throw enough money at a problem and it disappears. That premise just failed, in public, in real time. You can buy players, you can buy tournaments, you can buy silence for a while. What you cannot buy is legitimacy, and once the public decides you never had it, no amount of Saudi capital is buying it back. What happens now? Does Phil ever respond to what Rory said, or does he let the silence do the talking for him? Because at this point, silence might be its own confession. Does Rory's stance ever soften, or is this the line he refuses to cross for the rest of his career, no matter what happens next? And does LIV actually survive this, or did we just watch the beginning of the end happen live, without anyone even realizing it in the moment? Nobody has the answers. Not yet. But one thing is certain, this feud is not cooling down. If anything, what just happened was only the opening move. Here's my honest take. I don't think Phil comes back from this one easily, not at 56, not with this much stacked against him at once. But I could be wrong, and that's exactly why I want to hear from you. A year from now, who's in worse shape? Phil Mickelson, or the league he burned everything down to build? Argue it out in the comments below, and subscribe now, because whatever happens next, you're going to want to have seen this coming.